Just a quick update. I did record this video before Squarebase put out their full leak/review, which is why I haven't got the screenshots. But as mentioned in just a second, I am waiting for my new microphone cable, and then I will have full actual scans of the book to go through for my full review of all of the other bits and pieces. Enjoy the video. The Arcane Journal is almost here. Apologies for the sound quality. I have had an issue with my microphone, waiting on your new microphone cable. And also, the person that I got my leaks from did ask that I don't share the images on screen. So, this is an initial video. I wanted to talk about the veteran sellswords from the new Renegade Crowns Arcane Journal Army of Infamy. I think they're really interesting. I think they're worth talking about. So, I wanted to record something that I could put up on Saturday, and then what I'm going to do is wait until I've got my actual audio fixed, and then I've got a little bit more time. I'll have proper scans as well, so I can bring you more interesting visual aids, and I don't have to type out everything as well, because it's a right pain in the backside having to type out all these rules. Veteran sellswords are, in my opinion, the most interesting core unit that we've seen, I think, all edition. They're really interesting. Now, I'm kind of looking at this through the lens of, obviously, we know Cathay's a problem. It's probably something we have to start talking about soon. But in the lens of, I'm assuming that that does get wrapped up at some point, and or you're playing in an event that's limited the amount of balloons, yada yada. So before people go, oh yeah, it's great, but what about balloons? Yes, obviously we're looking at it in the lens of playing the game against actual armies instead of just the usual problems that we're expecting of the last couple of months. So veteran sellswords. Now, what do they have? They are, am I on the right page? No, I'm absolutely not. So let's just scroll backwards, because I could re-record this, but we're all human, so let's just go from here. Veteran sellswords. The stat line is basically that of a veteran state trooper, with the key difference is the leadership is worse. So they're leadership 5 base, leadership 6 at the top end. However, they do come with rules that stop that from being a problem. So if we're comparing these basically to the veteran state troops. There's also a version of the veteran sellswords, which is just the normal sellswords. As expected, we'll compare that to, you guessed it, the normal state troops. Who could have thunk it? So I really like these. I think they're incredibly flexible, and they come with a whole raft of options. First of all, how do they work? 0 to 1 unit per 1,000 points. This is a core unit. It's something that you're going to be taking as either your analogy for veteran state troops, or there are a couple of other interesting things that we can do that I want to get in towards the end of the video. They have a worse leadership. Talked about that already, but it comes with Warband, Horde, and Veteran. Veteran baked in is exactly the same as veteran state troops. Warband and Horde is really nice. You're getting, obviously, Horde on the normal veteran state troops, but Warband here gives you rerolls to your charge rolls, which is just nice to have on an infantry unit where you're more likely to fail your charges than for a cavalry unit. But on top of that, it does combine to give you leadership 9 as long as your unit champion is alive, which is pretty solid. Now, normally that would be a downgrade over just having a half decent leadership. This ends up with a better leadership than the veteran state troops, which I believe is 7 natively. This gets up to 9. Normally, you would be vulnerable to first charge. There is a rule that we'll get into in just a second, which stops it from being a problem. So I think this is, at base, just a flat upgrade over the veteran state troops, and I'm really happy to play around with it. I think this detachment's got a lot of really interesting stuff that we look at. It's the most elf-like way to play Empire. I haven't talked about them here, but there's Outriders and Core, which at their base are 11-point fast cavalry. They don't have anything if you pay 11 points per, but for that cost, they're just good, cheap scoring fast cav. You can give them reserve moves. So definitely something I'm excited to talk about and play around with in the future. You can also give them drilled at 1 point per model. Cool, it's good. This will combo with the rule that we're going to get to, Phalanx, which is worth considering. So definitely worth keeping in mind. Now, there is a downside here. You can only take core magic items, so the stuff from the main book in this detachment. There are some ways around it, and we can put the Griffin banner into the unit, assuming that we put a battle standard bearer in there, which we probably will. But that is, a marked downside if you want to use them as just a straight veteran state troop alternative. I like the BSB in there. It comes in at 35 points base before you put any upgrades on there. It's cheap. I don't mind it too much. Empire don't really have issues with, trying to cap out their character points, so it's not something I'm super worried about, other than it's easier to snipe, but you can make them relatively tanky as well. So something we can talk about going later into the video. Now, the Mercenary Host. This is a detachment rule that you get for being part of the Renegade Crowns Arcane Army of Infamy. And the way that it works is you can buy different upgrades, and these upgrades for your characters, and this is for both your characters, either the melee character, which is a new type of character, which is basically just a captain, captain slash general analog, but with worse leadership, or you can take outcast wizards from the Bretonnian Army of Infamy, Arcane Journal. I'm getting my words mixed up there. So you can take the Outcast Wizard, which is capped at a level 3 wizard, which in 1.5 is not bad at all. Super cheap. I think it's 105 points for level 3, which is ridiculous. A good swathe of magic laws that you can take. And depending on how you upgrade them, you can get some really good magic items on there as well. Empire magic items, I would say, in terms of the magic items you can put on your wizards, better usually than the Bretonnian ones. But there's some wriggle room there, which is quite interesting. So if you take the Might of Miragliano, the origin for any of your characters, and remember this can go on your wizard as well. 0 to 1 unit of the sellsword or veteran sellsword infantry may change its troop type to heavy infantry. Really nice here, because what it does is it means that you have to be disrupted by having unit strength 10 in your flank or rear, and may have the Phalanx special rule for 10 points per unit. Now, this is a really solid rule, but what do you get for Might of Miragliano? This is a 25-point upgrade, again, can go on any of your characters. You get +1 modifier to your leadership characteristic. You gain Stubborn and Tillian Stoicism as special rules. Tillian Stoicism, basically, if you put it into a unit, it gives that unit Stubborn as long as they haven't already made a break test. So if you just start a character in the unit for 25 points, you get +1 to the leadership. So even if somehow the unit that you've joined is disrupted, you then also get the Stubborn special rule as well. So I really like this. I think it's a solid little upgrade you can go for. And having this in your army gives you the ability to pay for the Phalanx special rule for 10 points per model. Not a point per model, it's 10 points per unit, sorry. So a very nice way of upgrading something that you want to take probably around 30 of these veteran sellsword infantry. Looking at the Phalanx special rule, basically it gives you a couple of things. The first one is as long as it's on a close order unit, which I think it has to go on. I'm not sure there's any way around that, but maybe I've missed something. You are in combat order, even if you are deeper than you are wide. So if you want to be, for example, heavy infantry and get lots of rank bonus, and that's all you care about, you could be 4 models wide and then 6 or 7 ranks long. And that would be, or deep, I should say, 6 or 7 ranks deep, and you would still be in combat order instead of marching column. You still get the rank bonus, all of that good stuff. You can't march as if you're in marching column. If you want to be in marching column, you have to then be deeper than you are wide, but also lower than your rank bonus width. So for heavy infantry, you'd have to be 3 models wide or narrower, and for light infantry, you'd have to be 4 models wide or narrower. Pretty simple stuff. This is fine. I don't care too much about it. It does mean that it's easier to keep hold of your rank bonus. Maybe you start wider, but then as you start to take casualties, you maybe lose combat, give ground, reform, so that you're only 4 wide and you've got like 24 models, so you go 6 deep. But it just means that even at the end of the next combat, you're still getting the rank bonus. You're still, importantly, getting the extra rank bonus from the Griffin banner, which you'd have to put on a BSB. So I think that's really solid. The main thing, in addition, if this unit is charged by an enemy unit with the first charge special rule, it does not become disrupted. This is absolutely massive. Now, there is a little bit of a... You could argue, and I do not think you should argue this, but it's funny, so I'm going to point it out. If you are flank charged by a unit of first charge, you would not technically become disrupted, because it just says here, if you're charged with a unit of first charge, you don't get disrupted. It doesn't say first charge doesn't disrupt you. Obviously, this isn't the intent. If you try and play it this way with a friend, they'll probably slap you. If you try to play it this way at a tournament, the TO will rule against you. But it is just a funny, poorly worded rule there. Also, Oh, and then it just clarifies there how the marching column works. So not giving up your rank bonus when you charge, which with the Griffin banner, very important. You're stacking +6 combat res, and again, I do realize you have to put on the BSB, but the way that it would work, meaning that you just don't give up your rank bonus if you're hit, and because you're heavy infantry, it takes a unit strength 10 unit in the flank. That's a lot. That is a really solid um, unit that's just not going to run away as much. And, it's coming in at cheaper than the equivalent a lot of the time. So we've talked about the sort of base line, what you get for it, but they do come with more options than any unit that I've seen. You may at this point, by the time the video goes up, have seen the datasheet, but it's worth talking about all of the options. So armor options, you can start with the light armor, that's free, great stuff. This is the equivalent of what you get on the veteran state troops or the regular state troops. You can buy a shield for a point per model. Again, we're still in that same realm of this is an option you can get for veteran state troops. After that, for 2 points per model, you can upgrade your light armor to heavy armor. I think this is worthwhile, given that again you start cheaper than your the regular veteran state troops. Veteran state troops start at 7 points per model without a shield. You start at 5 points per model without a shield for a veteran sellsword. So if you buy heavy armor, you become the equivalent points cost before you look at any other upgrades. Or for 4 points per model, you can get full plate. Now, generally, I don't think I'd recommend that. I think what I'm looking for is likely going to be shields and heavy armor. 3 points per model, getting you up to 8 points base. You're going to get a 3-up armor save in combat because of the parry rule. The hand weapon shield giving you an additional +1 to your armor save. This caps out at a 3-up armor save. So even if you go full plate and a shield, you don't get up to a 2-up save in combat. But I think for 3 points per model, this is a pretty incredible way to get more juice out of a unit that if you're an Empire player, you were already running. And just having that additional +1 to your save is going to make a big difference in terms of, if you're used to having combats go slightly in your favor or slightly out of your favor, suddenly they're moderately in your favor. If you're getting absolutely stomped, you're going to be losing by less. 3-up save is a really, really solid place to be, and it's very cheap to get there compared to what you're paying for, in the Empire equivalent. Weapons. They can only take one weapon, but I think most of the weapons are worth considering. You start off with hand weapon. You can buy thrusting spears, probably the only one I wouldn't really consider. You can go for halberds. Now, I don't think I would bother with halberds, but at 1 point per model, if you want a little bit more punch to your unit without going whole hog into a proper melee weapon that costs you more points, this is the way to do it. Great weapons are 2 points per model. This is something that I think is really interesting because you can make core greatswords, which we'll get to in a second. Crossbows, 2 points per model, or handguns at 3 points per model. I think this is very interesting because your general missile troop comes in, I think it's 7 points per model for a basic missile troop. So if you buy no upgrades, you just go, I'm going to take a crossbow and no upgrades. You're the same cost as a missile troop, but you have light armor as well. The trade-off is you have worse, not ballistic skill. You have worse leadership, which can very easily be mitigated. But you can give this unit loads of options. So I think a ranged missile unit with, light armor and shield, heavy armor and shield, whatever you want to pay for, this is a really strong way to make it probably worth taking missile troops. And the way that you're going to put them in your core, you probably only want one missile unit, but I think it's something that's worth considering. Whether or not you go crossbows or handguns, I think it doesn't matter too much. Realistically, this isn't a unit that's going to kill a huge amount at range. I like it as an off objective holder. So maybe you've got one unit of veteran sellswords, Griffin Banner, BSB, loaded to the nines. They're going to hold or fight for that middle objective, but then you've got a second objective off to the side. You don't have, or well, you do have Empire Archers, but maybe you just want to put some crossbows or handguns on the flank. They're there with their heavy armor and shields. They're not really taking much in the way of enemy return firepower. They're winning those, and then if they do get charged, they're not just immediately folding because they have a 3-up armor save. Got it, maybe a unit champion, whatever you want to put in there, a couple of ranks. So, what do I think the base loadouts are going to be for this? And I think there's definitely some space to see variation on these. And I'm interested to see what people come up if there's anything that I missed out on as like a generic combo or role that I would expect to see. First of all, It's a veteran state troop replacement. You can't take veteran state troops in this detachment, so what if you just did it with this unit? I think they do them better. For the same points cost, you go heavy armor and shield, full command, Griffin banner, obviously on the BSB, but we're just rolling the cost into this unit here because it's affecting the unit. Paying 10 points to give them a phalanx roll, 8 points per model. I think that's really, really solid. I really like what this does, and I think this is a semi fire and forget unit that you can just take 30 of. 8 points per model, 240 points. You spend around 100 points for the BSB with a little bit of defensive items on there. Add in the cost of the Griffin banner. You got a sub 500 point unit here, realistically, or sub 400 point unit, I should say, which is holding down objectives in a really solid way. Quite hard to get rid of. Immune to first charge, heavy infantry, so it's not going to be disrupted as easily. Can go narrower than the regular veteran state troops that you'd see and still get the close order bonus. I think this is solid. Also, if you're wanting to remove attacks coming at you, so say for example your opponent's got a unit of 4 Dragon Ogres or something like that, if you go 4 wide, I guess the Dragon Ogres will still get all their attacks. Anyway, if your opponent has a wide unit that has multiple attacks, you can take less damage from it. So in terms of the actual comparison, 10 points more in total than the veteran state troops with phalanx and a better save. I really like that. And the fact that they've got leadership 9 as well, which is not immune to being removed, but it's very hard to remove. I think this is really, really solid. Next up, we've got Greatswords, but core. Now, something to mention just off the rip. I don't think I put it in here. They have less strength, or maybe I did actually. We'll come back to that one. So, how am I equipping them? I'm probably going full plate with great weapons and shields. The full plate's 4 points, the great weapons 2 points, the shields 1 point. So we're getting up to 12 points per model. That's 1 point more than great swords if they don't buy veteran, but we come with veteran natively. Really solid. Full command and banner of choice, or Chios, as I typed it here. Yes, you can't take the Empire banners, which means that you're not putting, natively putting the Griffin banner on here, but War banner or Rampaging banner if you wanted to go for actually getting the charge off, or you might even want to give this stubborn. Again, you could do this through putting a character in there with the upgrade that I cannot remember the name of, but I talked about at the start of the video. There's a lot of different options. A 50-point stubborn banner on this unit, not the end of the world. The way I see this being used is with an outcast wizard. With demonology, you're going to be using Steed of Shadows to march it up the board, saying, you can charge me, but I will not fold. I'll maybe just hold with the full plate and shields. And then on the next turn, you want to cast Demonic Vessel, get those extra attacks, AP and strength, rinse through whatever you're in combat with. Is it as good as dedicated melee units from other armies? Not really. Is it the best that Empire can do in core as a melee unit? Absolutely. I think it's pretty solid. I think it really competes with, and maybe even beats the Empire Knights that are upgraded with, Knights of the White Wolf. But yeah, it's other things you can do. It's a really solid scoring unit, and it lets you use those greatsword models if you want to do so. Again, not 8 points per model. Apologies for that. Just ignore that on your screen. It should be 12 points per model. So yeah, same cost as great swords if they buy veteran, -1 strength, but you get shields, which gives you more range defense, and it also means that you can soak a charge better with a 3-up save in combat, which I think is a valuable thing to do. Finally, the other option I see, you've talked about a little bit already, is flexible ranged core, which is heavy armor, shields, probably crossbows, because I'm going to use them off on a flank as opposed to using them centrally. I think this is a really solid way to equip them, and they're pretty cheap, in my opinion, for what you get. Command optional, probably unit champion, probably nothing else. 10 points per model, or if you don't actually care about them being veteran, you can do this with the regular sellswords, which are uncapped in core. This is maybe something I'd consider. You lose out on veteran, you lose out on just like a couple of little bits and pieces. It's not the end of the world. You're not going to give them full plate anyway, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. It's only 2 to 3 points more than a naked state missile troop, but you've got a unit that's got a 3-up save in combat. So the things that are going to threaten to deal with your, Empire archers or your crossbowmen, your state missile troops that normally are just, completely naked. They're a T3 body with no defense. That unit of direwolves that hits you in the front, you kill a couple with stand and shoot, they bounce off you because you've got a 3-up armor save. You're going to make your 2 ranks of attacks back. That's how I envision this unit being used. Something probably along the lines of like 14 to 16, two ranks of seven, two ranks of eight. Standard, only getting a few shots off. It's not the most efficient shooting unit in the world, but it's a more efficient off holding unit. And if your opponent's threatening to charge you with like a dragon or something, you can always just rank up into a square. And especially if you pay for the Phalanx upgrade, which I don't think I'd necessarily do on this one, but that would give you the ability to just go four wide. So maybe you go 17 models, pay for them to have flanks. And then if a dragon's looking to charge you, you go 4x4 with one model out back, challenge them with a unit champion. You've got a static combat res of 3 ranks and a close order infantry outnumber. You're probably winning that combat. Just gives you a lot more flexibility than most ranged units that you would normally have, I think. So yeah, I like this as an option. Feels pretty solid in terms of just not falling over immediately to being run over by dragons or this sort of units that you might normally have hunting for baggage trains or bits and pieces like that. I'd be interested to see how they do against Pegasus Knights. That would be, just 3 Pegasus Knights. Obviously, not a reasonable comparison in that they're going to have Banner Echelons and a character. But as a sort of benchmark, if they could beat 3 Pegasus Knights, that would probably be a pretty solid benchmark to meet. I'll have to have a look at some maths. Maybe when I do the full review video, we can talk about that. Now, we do also have some very, very cheap support pieces that we can roll into the units as well. And the first one being Outcast Wizards, which I think are pretty incredible. They're 105 points for a level 3 wizard, I think. Depending on how you kit them out, we'll talk about that next slide. You can give them access to items from, Empire potentially. Also, starting off with Demonology, just a great place to start. Steed of Shadows, Demonic Vessel, two very, very strong abilities that you can, two very strong spells you can pick. If you're going for like the Greatsword list, this is a really good way of doing it. You can fly them up in front of your opponent, tank the charge with your full plate, your shield, your hand weapon, and then get through that, cast Demonic Vessel, and then bring the Thunder with some Strength 6 great weapons that are AP3. I think that's a pretty solid way to do it. A couple of attacks each. Battle Magic, Oaken Shield, Fireball, Arcane Urgency. It's just a gimme. I really like this as like I want a Death Star to hold a point. I don't need it to be in combat. I want it to hold. I also want it to have some sort of ranged output so that it's not just sat there doing nothing if my opponent tries to avoid it and plays like an evasive game, which you can do like Wood Elves or something into scoring. So I think Battle Magic is really good. And then Elementalism, always good. Plague of Rust, Earthen Ramparts. I'm less on the Elementalism hype train. I much prefer Battle Magic. But if you want to go Elementalism, I think that's solid with mostly the scoring Griffin Banner veteran state troop replacement, or maybe the shooting brick. If you're trying to put more guns in, you've gone for the the rare slot organ guns potentially. You can do stuff like elementalism to get more value out of your shooting, and then also your big core brick can have shooting as well. Moving on, you can take the character upgrades to support them. Might of Mariagliano, +1 leadership and stubborn. This is just a good thing to put into your brick. Remember, it gives you stubborn on the unit as well through the something of Tilia. Noble Outlaw, +1 burst skill. Oh, I guess I forgot to finish typing. Apologies. It's been a very busy day. This gives you ranged weapons, but it also opens up the Empire items. So you can start putting Empire magic arcane items on there. You can use this Noble Outlaw upgrade for your BSB as well to get access to the Griffin standard, stuff like that. I think it's just a really interesting way to build out the characters. And it gives you a lot of flexibility that you can put in. In terms of the infantry characters as well, Noble Outlaw is probably going to be the go-to for your BSB, so you can take the Griffin standard. But otherwise, you're probably looking at maybe the Might Marigliano, because that's going to give you the stubborn on the unit. And just, yeah, I think for how cheap they are, you can do a lot with the support characters. And again, Empire never struggling for the, they don't spend their full character points. And in this build, they definitely don't because they're really limited on choices. But I do think this is an interesting way to build. And it's something that I'm definitely excited to put on the tabletop. It just feels a lot more elfy and scoring than base Empire, which I think is an interesting way to build.